Hey folks, welcome to this Worldographer 2025 101 video. I'm Joe Wetzel, the creator of the program, and what you see in front of you is a randomly generated map that we just went up to the File menu and picked New World Kingdom Map, and you can check these things on to have it auto-generate your coasts and your rivers and empires and roads and so forth. Or you can leave those off, and then you would go up to the Generate menu here, and you can generate them step by step, which has the advantage of you can tweak the terrain before you add coasts and rivers, and then tweak that before you add nations and empires and so forth. But most of these things that were added to the map are shapes to help us with this functionality. With those generators, you can generate some as features so that you can make your rivers kind of look a little bit prettier in a way that they're a little more artistic, but they're also less flexible, less dynamic in that when you, if you are taking advantage of our world continent kingdom map level functionality, which kind of lets you zoom into the map and see more detail and have, say, 6 hexes across per hex in the parent and that sort of functionality, the shapes are a better fit for that because the features approach doesn't scale those icons up. And we went into our Worldographer 2025 101 Features tab video. We went into some detail with that. But here we're talking about this Shapes tab over here on the side of the screen here. You can tab between these things. You can also use toolboxes, which just is a floating dialog, so that if you want to kind of see more of your map area and move your floating dialog around, you can do the toolbox approach. But either way, the controls are consistent. So in this auto-generated map, there might be a few things that we want to tweak, for example, and really I'm just going to do this river here as an example of that. You've got the river not quite extending into the ocean because the generator added in some additional strips of land, and the river isn't quite long enough. So I can just go ahead and hit select here to select any of the shapes on the map, whether they're a polygon or a line or whatever, and we'll get into the differences as we create some of those. But I can click one of these points of the line that I want to edit. It doesn't have to be the point that I want to move. And then I can hold down the control key. This little help text over here tells you what's what. But if I control drag, I'm going to end up moving a point. So I can control drag this point to move it into the ocean. If I wanted to add an additional point, because now I've got a big strip there, I can hold down the Alt key and click that, click a point there. Oh, that actually selected a different spot. So let me go ahead and deselect, and we'll just select again. And this time I'll just be a little bit further off so I don't accidentally click the other one. And so now I've got a point that's not quite in the place that I want. So what I can do is just hold down Control to move all of these points around. So I can move this one down a little bit, move this one down a little bit, and move this one up here a little bit, and I can get a shape that I want. So that's basic shape editing of the points. If I wanted to go back and say not have one of these points, I can hold down the Shift key to delete one, and there you go with that. So that's basic shape editing. If I wanted to do that for the polygon, it's the same sort of functionality. The roads are the same as the rivers. So we'll touch on some more of the controls as we go through the rest of this demo. I do want to not overlook anything, so I'm going to go and do this sort of in order. I'm going to go back over, or I'm going to move over to the ocean here just so we can put down an arc oval. And for this, we just kind of are clicking the center point of our arc/oval, and then clicking another point. Now, why is it that color blue? Because we're inheriting the shape properties here, because that's the last thing that was selected. But if you wanted to change these things around, you can change it to a texture, make it thicker, add a fill, put the color back in. So it's really whatever you want here. You can make this a texture, make it a different texture. So you've got all these options here, and yeah, actually, let's just go through. Since we already went through half of these options, let's just go through them. This medicine dropper is kind of cool in that it lets you pick a color from the map and set it to that color. So if I went ahead and made this fill that color, and if I didn't have an easy way to get back to that color, if I wanted to make this, well, let's scroll over a little bit so we can see a different color on the edge of the screen at the very least. So if I wanted to match that border color to this green over here, I can hit that medicine dropper and pick on the map, and it's going to be the exact same shade of green. And so you'll see these throughout the whole UI, these little medicine droppers next to most of the color pickers. If you wanted to, though, pick a particular color, you've got this dialog will show up that gives you a number of swatches of commonly used colors, as well as these custom colors are set to be the colors or the default background colors of the default terrain. Just off the screen, let's see if I can scroll up here and show it to you. Yeah, so now we've got also a custom color link here, which pulls up a new dialog, and let's scroll that over. And so you can get to a color in a number of different ways here by setting any of these things, as well as the opacity of something, and then hit save, and then it's going to be that particular shade that you picked from that color picker. So you've got a multitude of different ways to get a particular color, and of course this other color picker is the same thing. We showed the texture pickers. You can configure the textures and add in new textures with this little configure button next to the texture if you want to do that. We'll save that for another video. You can also get to it up here on the configure menu, configure textures, but since I know that there's a lot of controls on the shapes drawer, we're going to stick to the shapes drawer as much as possible, and we'll address these menu bars in a future video. Tags, I showed this with the features drawer, but with tags you can set the tag, and then yeah, since that shape is set up as a river, we can hide objects with a tag by typing in river, and once we get to river, then it disappears. We can also turn off all the objects except for the shapes with a particular tag over here in this other box next to it. Layer, so we've talked in the other videos about the various layer functionality in the tool. So by default, our rivers are put on a rivers layer, and because this shape was inheriting those properties, it got put on the rivers layer as well. So another way to kind of not show rivers is to uncheck that box, and it's going to turn off all the rivers on the map. Levels, if you are using our world, continent, kingdom functionality and you want to control what level a particular thing on the map is, in this case a particular shape is, which levels does it display on, you can uncheck these boxes if you don't want it to display on some of the other ones. GM only, so if this were an island, or some a giant spacecraft in the ocean, and only the GM knows about it, we can check on GM only, and then we can check off show for GM only over here, and it will disappear. Snap points to grid and add tile border to polygon. Okay, so both of these are particularly useful for your country borders. So if I wanted to select this country border here, which is this brownish color there, I can select it, so I'm inheriting all of these properties. And if I wanted to create a new border, let's say that there's an outpost of that particular country elsewhere on the map, say down here in this island area, I can now create polygon, and I've got all of the properties set to match that existing polygon. Snap points to grid is just going to make it so that my points are going to snap to the edges, or the vertices rather, of that particular shape. And I'm making this as a polygon right now. We could also, let me delete that. We can also make this as a line. Just hit line, and you're clicking the points. And it's just, even if I'm getting this clicking a little bit off from these points, it's going to snap it to either a vertex or a quarter way, halfway, 3/4 of the way across a hex, and also up and down as well. And this functionality works whether your hexes are in this orientation where the columns are lining up, or in the rows orientation where the rows line up. Let's delete that. Let's go back to polygon, because now we've got another functionality here, add tile border to polygon. And this is kind of cool in that if you've got a small a small kingdom that you want to add and make a country border for really quickly. And I should point out that that this style of having these borders match the hexes is something that the old war games and the Mystara maps that we're patterning these maps after would use. So I can just click on a particular hex, and you want to make it contiguous. You don't want to branch out. I don't want to do this where then I have a hollow hole there. But as long as I don't do that, then it's going to continue creating our country border here. And it's a quick way to make a small country map, if you will. Now, if you're going to be doing a large area, then you might have to click 150 hexes or something. So in that case, it might be easier just to click the borders, click the points of the borders, so you don't have to click all the interior ones. But it's an option, and it's kind of cool to do. All right, other things. We're going to select one of our shapes that was put on there, road. So again, I'm inheriting all those properties. I can use this to set up the properties as well. So if I wanted to hit road, it's going to give me those same settings for a road. Oh, actually, the default setting for a road is thicker. Might have to tweak that a little bit in our settings. You can update your settings by hitting this plus button here. So now if I do this, it's going to ask me what thing do I want to set this as, and if I give it the same name, it's going to override that. So now for this map, the width of a road is going to be 5%. If I wanted to delete a setting, I can hit the minus button there. And then Fractal is what I wanted to get to. Fractal is something that I find particularly useful for making roads. So if I wanted to add another road between these two other cities, I can go ahead and hit line. And so Fractal is only going to work effectively with lines. I think it might work with polygons, but mostly it's intended for lines. And so you can click the points, and I can just click from here to here, and it's adding all those additional points to the line to kind of give it that little bit of a randomness to it, which is an effect that I personally like. So that's what it does. Oh yeah, it does say it's for polygons too. So let's do polygon. So if we did a polygon between a couple of different points, you can see that's what it's doing. So there you go. What haven't we done here yet? So if I wanted to do a new polygon here, just to show this explicitly, we can just click the points of this polygon to build that out with Fractal off in this case. Now if I do a curve, that's really interesting to me. I love curves because it just gives you a nice gentle slope. They take a moment to understand how they work, but once you take that 30 seconds, you'll see it's kind of cool. So I click one anchor point, and then I click two more points that are kind of control points for that anchor, and then the next anchor point, and you get a curve, and this is a cubic curve that gives you a nice slope based on how these are set. And if I hold down control to kind of drag these around, you can see how our line will change based on that. And so you click two more control points and another anchor point to create another section of your road in this case. So that's kind of cool to do. I'm going to select our arc oval here that we have, and I'm going to show some more things about that. So if I hit this, any of the points of this arc oval, it'll select it for me. For arcs and ovals, we have a couple of specialty options here. We have the start angle, extent angle, and closure type over here on the line options sub-tab, if you will. And the extent angle is what if I just change the start angle, well, because the extent is set to 360 degrees, it's going to be the entire circle. However, if I change this to something else, even if it's just 330, you can see it's going to give me a little bit of an opening there. And then I can control, do I want this to be a chord where it's going to cut across that area? Do I want it to basically, I don't know why round gives me basically a pie cutout, but that's what it does. We're just using the underlying graphics library and the terminology they use, so I don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. And if I increase this, that opening is going to shift. If I want to make that opening bigger, I can do this. So that's how these arc options work. Let me go back to this polygon shape to show the next thing, because I think that's going to be the most useful way of showing some of these other options. Let me make it thicker. So right now we've got a line cap that's square, and oh, actually maybe a line would be better. Yeah, let's do a line instead. So let's do a line for this. So we can just click a few points of a line. I do want some sharp bends just to show off the differences here. So the line cap is square. That's just saying that, yes, there is going to be a little bit of a section of line that caps the end. If I want to make it, but it's going to file that off. And if I want to make it round, then it's going to give me a round ending there. Now the line join, so if I go back to square, for example, yeah, if I do the line join though, right now the line join is round. If you look closely, let me scroll even further, you can see that we've got a rounded edge there, or corner there, I should say. We can make it miter, which when you have a couple, I double clicked here, so that's why you're getting this weirdness down here. So if I just hit shift click to delete one of those, you can go back to the way it should. So that's the miter, and then bevel just kind of files that off. So you've got these different line options. So if you've got some nuance to your map that you want to control that, you can. Oftentimes I don't worry about it. I'm sort of so zoomed out that it doesn't really matter. But if you're zoomed in, if you're making something where you want some fine control over fine details, you can do so. All right, for the next thing that I'm going to show these, since I'm over here, I'm going to show the extra line options over there, and we're going to zoom out a little bit here. I want to show an elevation style line to show that there's a sharp cliff face here, And so I want this to be a brownish color, which I know that the trail does, but yeah, let's see what trail does for me. So yeah, this gives me a 10%. I want to make this a 5% line, and I want the color to be a little bit different. I'm going to pick that color to start with, and I'm going to customize it, and we will make it, let's go here, let's reduce the saturation, let's shift the hue a little bit. No, I did like that hue. Let's go reduce the brightness, increase the brightness, increase the brightness some. The problem is that I don't want to get too close to the hill color either. So I'm going to save this, and we'll see how that looks. I don't want any fill. The tag here will be the elevation because we're making an elevation line, and roads. The layer, I'm going to just do above terrain for the layer for this. And once those things are set, now I'm going to show stroke type. Here we're going to make it elevation. And I'm going to now, let's see, do we have, okay, so we don't have snap points on, which I don't want. I do want to show this as kind of a bit of a, let's delete, I must have had the old line still selected, so let's go ahead and just create a new line now. So I can just create my new line here showing, I'm going to pull these a little bit closer in. There. I don't like that at all. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to start over. I'm going to click 1 point, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm trying to go close to the edges of this mountain range, but not exactly on it. And, truth be told here, this isn't really the greatest looking elevation line. It's just sticking out too much. You have these extra line options to control all that. So these extra lines, what's the thickness that you want for those? And, that was just way too thick. So if I set these also to 5% of a hex, that makes a lot more sense. The distance between them, because we changed that, I feel like we should change this. And then the length also is just way too long. I think that this should be more like maybe 10. And so you can play with these settings to get the look that you want. I think I like that. I want to go back to the color though. I do want to make it maybe, maybe I want to go something much grayer. Maybe that would be good. So let's pick this. Let's go with let's go with that. Maybe it's something a little bit lighter. Yeah, I like that. So it's what you want. You've got the full control over it. But I think that is really useful. Now, the control for which side these show up on is based on how you drew it. So since we drew it from here to here, it's putting it on that side. If we had drawn it the other way and we wanted the elevation line to be, well, let's do that. Let's do it the wrong way. Deselect. Let's do another one over here. So here, if I go top down as well, it is going to be on the wrong side. So how do we fix that? Well, we can set the elevation of the stroke type to elevation inverted, and we get that. So there you go. And if you have a couple of places like this where these things overlap the wrong way, now I'm going to hold down Shift and delete one of those because I see that there was a double click there. In fact, there might even be a triple click. So let me just get rid of those extras. Yeah, and then you can just drag these around a little bit to kind of get it so it doesn't quite overlap for you. All right, and then there's one other control here. If you notice closely, we didn't touch on separation because separation is only for a railroad line. So for the sake of argument, let's say we select this. Let's say that this is a railroad for some reason. We can switch that. We can make the stroke type railroad, and then we get this. Now the problem here is that it should have given me two. Oh, okay. Once I started changing these, okay, so I guess the separation by default was 0, but it wasn't updating here. So once I shifted it a little bit, then it let me have control over, or let me see that there were two separate lines there. Again, these points can be moved around, so I can hold down Control so that I get a more natural looking road to it, so I don't have these weird overlaps, and kind of to tweak that look if I so desire. I can also, reduce that separation and reduce the length to kind of play with it as well, just to kind of get it a little bit. Yeah. So you can play with that to get the effect that you want, but it's kind of cool to do, and this is all new in Worldographer 2025. It used to be kind of just a standard, and if you wanted your strokes to be longer, these little tick marks to be longer or whatever, you didn't have any control over that. All right, let's see. Did I cover changing the z-axis stuff? So for things that are on the same layer, you can move things up and down. So for example, let's see what else is on this same layer. Is this elevation line on the same layer as that road? I don't know off the top of my head, but so it's not. So because I just tried to move that down. Let's say though that we do create another line. Let's say that it's another railroad line going from here to here, just to be real simple. Let's give it a slightly different color so we can see the difference. Now, this will be on the same layer that we had the other line on, and you can see what layer it's on right here. They're both on the roads layer. So I can move that down to the bottom. I can move it to the top, or I can move it up one or down one. And for that, went over this in the features video as well, so this functionality is basically the same, but it's looking at what things it overlaps, and so it's going to move it down one thing that it's overlapping. Or up one thing that it's overlapping. Okay. So sometimes it won't be apparent because it's looking at a bounding box, and it might be that somehow there's a different shape that's got a bounding box. So you might have to click this a couple of times before you'll see that happen. But if you click it a couple of times, you'll see it move down. So I think we covered pretty much everything there. We've covered everything here. We've covered all of this. Next up will be shadows. Shadows is something that you're not going to use too often for these types of maps, but if you did want to use it, let's create a simple polygon. Let me go and off into the ocean up here. We'll create another polygon up here and show what shadows do. So if I want to add a drop shadow, I can check this box on. I need to give it a color. Let's say we're going to give it a black. And then we do need to have some settings here so that we can see it spread out. See the radius. So you can see that line showing around there. Offset just lets us kind of push it to one side or the other. Inner shadow is going to work in a similar way for our shape. And then box blur is going to just give a blur effect to things. So these are additional settings that you have. It's not going to be that commonly used for this type of map. I often use the drop shadows for a battle mat where I want to have my walls and have a little bit of a shadow effect on the edges of the walls just to make them stand out, make them pop, make them look more like walls. But you're not going to see that happen too much here. So I think that covers our shapes drawer, and that was quite a bit of functionality. So we're going to pause it there, and we'll be back in a few days or a week, depending, to go over another piece of functionality, probably working our way through these various tabs on the side. We'll probably do labels and probably combine the rest because the labels don't have as much functionality as shapes do, and there's not as many controls anyway as there are for shapes. So I hope that's useful to you. Again, we'll have links below the video to the other videos in this series, as well as where to download the Worldographer 2025 update. If you have the prior version of Worldographer and you want to upgrade, we'll have a link to that as well. So I hope that it's useful to you. I hope that you're able to make some great maps with the software. So thanks so much. Bye.